explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And we bring you this live special edition of the show because I screwed up and didn't build in time for us to do our preview episode in our normal schedule. So you get us unedited on the Oscars this year. We'll see whether this continues long term or not. Maybe this will be a thing. I don't know. We're working on more and more live editions of the show, I guess. We're going to have a ranking special sometime during the summer to rank the 25 James Bond films and say a fond farewell before it becomes part of IP hell under Amazon.
Yeah.
If you are not familiar with what happened this week, just basically Google James Bond Amazon and you'll find it this week. So, yeah. Anyway, if you have any questions during the live stream tonight, and it looks like we may... Oh, there it is. Except it's not listing. We're going to have to fix some stuff. This is the problem with going live. We had an error on our live feed or whatever, so I got to make sure that everybody's here. So give me 1 second to make sure that everybody knows where to go, because it's screwed up on our original end. And we'll add that later. But I do have the ability to take questions live in the YouTube chat. So you can do that or submit questions in the chat if you so choose to anything as we're doing the show. So that's one component of being live. So
True.
With that, let's get started. I do want to say that we're going to kind of change up the order. In other years, we have been basically when we went with the smallest categories first and we built up to the biggest categories. This year, in order to just kind of reshuffle the deck and make things interesting, because some people are only interested in like the top line categories, we wanted to present it in the way that the Oscars does. So we're actually going to start with Best Supporting Actress this year. And if you're not familiar with how we do our preview episode every year, I just want to tell you, first off, we will tell you who we think will win. And that does come into importance with our annual Oscars bet, which we will be talking about a little bit later once we get to the in memoriam tiebreaker that we do before we get to our Best Picture rankings. But then we will also tell you what we think should win. So that can vary from category to category. But this is obviously one of the big ones. So we'll start here with Best Supporting Actress. And Dad, as last year's loser, you get the opportunity to pick whether I go first or you go first on this category. And then we will alternate going forward.
Go ahead.
All right. Will win. I hate to say it. I think Zoe Saldana is going to win this category. I think that there's just enough almost pity at this point from the Sofia Gascon issues that have plagued Emilia Perez for the last several weeks that should get her over the finish line. And Netflix is basically pouring itself into winning at least international feature, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and supporting actress to try and win. But I will say the best performance that I thought out of these five should win this year is Ariana Grande. And because I don't know if we're going to talk a ton about Wicked later on, she's just the one that most surprised me in a movie this year. I think there are several really good choices in this one. Monica Barbaro was really good in that performance, but I think there's more that could be done eventually by her as an actress to really shine and finally get her moment. But I'm not sure this is the one yet. Felicity Jones is obviously a wonderful actress. I believe she has an Oscar before, if I remember correctly. I think it was 2014, maybe. I don't remember completely. Isabella Rossellini was the one for me where I just don't quite understand that nomination. She's barely in the movie. She doesn't do all that much for me. I think you could have recognized several other actresses here, but for me, I will go will win Saldana and should win Grande.
I have Saldana for will win. Actually, I had been thinking about Ariana Grande, and it was a close third for me um, because I went with Felicity Jones. I had just, in fact, I finished The Brutalist today. It had not been available to me until just recently. So I saw it today and I thought her performance was quite uh, mesmerizing. So that's where I went. It was close to Grande.
Not to prompt you into what we will talk about later, because I know for sure we're going to have a long discussion on the Brutalist later. But
Hmm.
I thought for me, the clinching of a nomination for her was the scene early on in the movie with her and Brody in bed together for the first time. I thought it was fantastic. And if you haven't seen the movie,
Yeah.
please go watch that scene and you'll kind of understand what I mean for what she does in that movie to escalate the quality going into the second half. I know many people have their detractions on what the second half is. They feel the first half is fantastic, and including our good friend Andrew Korn's, his mileage varies on the second half. And I've heard that refrain from a lot of people. I don't personally hold that, but
No.
we'll get to that after a while. All right. So we have Best Animated Short is our next category. Now, these are a few that you saw yesterday with me. I was trying to get as many of these in at the last minute as I could, and I did get to all of them. But you get to lead off with will and should win.
Will win Beautiful Men. Should win uh, Wander Wonder or Wander to Wonder.
Okay, did you get to all of these?
I got to 4 of the 5. I did not get to Yuck.
You kind of half watched that with me yesterday.
Okay, well, yes, I did, I guess, but I didn't finish it. That's the one I didn't finish.
All right. And there's your first Dana cough into the mic or throat clearing.
Sorry.
Fine. Anyway, let's let's just briefly discuss this. I think the favorite right now is Wander to Wonder. I don't know if that's for everybody, but I just don't understand that film. It's so bleak.
I know, but
Personally,
I
I was much more charmed by Magic Candies. So I have Wander to Wonder winning, but I think Magic Candies was the far superior film. And dead
all
air,
right. So there's
dead
our first
air.
difference.
Yes, if you're counting at home. And in case you want to follow along with the Oscars in order to keep up on our Oscars bet, the website will have a article as soon as the live stream is done, published what our picks were and everything else so that you can follow along if you choose. So, yes, that is the first difference between the two of us as to a pick. But why did you think that it should win? Why did you think Wander to Wonder should win? I should say that.
Yeah, it was bleak, but it was so well done. I mean, it was just I just thought it had a more quality about it than some of the other ones, and so I don't know. It's
I
guess
watched the
that's about the best I can explain.
I watched the animated shorts for two things. One, the animation, and two, for the storytelling. And to me, the animation was great in Wander to Wonder, and I do think in some ways that that's what the animation guild votes on, but the storytelling to me, I just had issues with. So that's why I went with Magic Candies. I thought it was at least a comparable animated film, and then the storytelling to me was far superior.
I enjoyed that the most.
All right. So then for best animated feature, this is going to be a pretty easy category, I think, to pick the will win. It's basically been crowned for a while now, and that's The Wild Robot. Personally, having seen it, it's fine. It's a decent movie. I don't think it's quite the level that everybody keeps talking about it being a top 10 movie of the year, even though I think in some ways that this is probably a down year overall for film. But I just personally think Inside Out 2 was the better movie. Of the two that I've seen, I think Inside Out 2 to me had more to say
I'm at Wild Robot as well. And I'm not going to mention on
for Will
who
Win.
should win because I just didn't have a chance to see all of the films.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of these I will still be going out for. You know what? I should have been I should have been naming off the nominees while we do this. So for best animated feature, the nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. I think has to be like the third or fourth Wallace and Gromit film that was nominated in the history of the Oscars. I not sure I understand it, but okay. And then The Wild Robot. So in this context, I think we could probably move on since you haven't seen a lot here. I think most people have probably seen Inside Out 2, and those that were probably going to watch The Wild Robot have probably already seen it. So we can move on. We now have the two screenplay categories. And in this one, the nominees are Anora, written by Sean Baker. We have The Brutalist, written by Brady Corbet. For a while, I thought it was Brady Corbett, but it's Corbet. So in case that comes up later tonight. And Mona Fastwald, A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg. September 5, written by Moritz Binder, Tim Fellbaum, and co-written by Alex David. And then finally, The Substance, written by Coralie Fargeet. I think I mispronounced that. Fargeet? Okay. Now, I believe, did I lead off the, yes, I led off the last category, so you get to go
Yes.
first on this one.
The one that I think is going to win is Anora. And what I think should win is September 5. I thought September 5 was absolutely brilliant as far as quality, acting. In fact, I would have put it in my top 10 for pictures for the year.
I think I would agree with that. I very much enjoyed the film. I thought it was propulsive would be a right word for me.
Yeah.
That it basically once it got going about maybe 8 to 10 minutes in, there was not a moment to kind of like let down. There was no
No.
let off until the end of the movie. And I thought that it was very well done, very well directed. I thought it had a lot to say. And I'm glad that you recognized it here because I think that it could have been nominated for a lot more. And I'm very curious to see what this director does long term. But for me, I will agree with you. I think Anora should win and will win. I won't talk about it here because it will come up much later in our best picture rankings. And it's not to disclose too early, but it's a very high ranking movie for me this year. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So then let's move to best adapted screenplay. On this, we had A Complete Unknown screenplay by James Mangold and Jay Cox. Then we have Conclave, written by Peter Strahan. I think that's right. Then we have Amelia Perez, screenplay by Jacques Audiard in collaboration with Thomas Biddegain, Leah Missius, and Nicholas Levecchi. Yeah, you're getting me trying to do these announcements or pronouncements live instead of the edited version where I can clip some of that off. All right. So anyway, moving to Nickel Boy screenplay by Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes. Sing Sing, screenplay by Clint Bentley, Greg Quidar, story by Clint Bentley, Greg Quidar, Clarence Macklin, and John Divine G. Whitfield. And I believe I go first here. My will win on this one, it seems pretty clear to me at this point, having consulted the WGA and some of the critics, that it will be Conclave. But to me, should win is Nickel Boys.
Um, that was my second. Um, I have Conclave will win, but I have should win as a complete unknown. I like,
Really?
yeah, I really like
Okay.
the screenplay a lot. I really like the story. I liked how everything was set up. Um, I just really enjoyed it. Although I will say that you thought I wouldn't like Nickel Boy, and I thought it was phenomenal.
Okay. Both of those will still be coming up again in our best picture discussion, so I will save some of that for then. All right, then let's move to best makeup and hairstyling. Now, other than A Different Man, which I did not see and is one of the nominees here, I have seen the four, well, at least three of the four other films and a partial on Nosferatu. I started it but did not have a chance to finish. So we have in our nominees for best makeup and hairstyling, A Different Man with Mike Marino, David Presto, and Crystal Warato. You know, at this point, for some of these, I probably don't need to read all the names, so I'm just going to read the films. Emilia Perez, Nosferatu, The Substance, and Wicked. I believe
Okay.
you lead off in this category.
Well, I have will win the substance, and I have should win Wicked.
Okay. So we have a split on should win, but we have a similar will win. I think The Substance is just doing so much more with its makeup than Wicked did. I mean,
Yeah.
Wicked isn't a bad film as far as that goes, and it did have some things that it was attempting to do. But when you have the multiple creatures and different things going on in that film and the grotesqueness of all of that, I don't know, maybe that should almost be costume designing as opposed to makeup and hairstyling. But even so, to have basically Demi Moore's face in the creature's back,
Yeah.
it was a feat. And while I don't think it is the seminal thing that I would nominate The Substance for this year, personally, and we'll get to it with sound, but I think it should have won sound. I have no idea why it wasn't even nominated, let alone isn't going to win. I also think the score should have been nominated because I think those two things were more important. But makeup and hairstyling is significant to The Substance this year, and
Yeah.
I think it deserves it. All right, moving ahead to another technical category here. We have Best Production Design. The nominees are The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. Now, I will say three of these films have some extraordinary challenges with sets. Obviously, the Dune sets, I think it won Best
Hmm.
Production Design a few years ago when Dune Part 1 was up. And the challenges of the different, I don't know, carriers or like helicarrier type things and the set design, the cinematography of the like arena planet with the black sun, exceptional. But part of it is that you're relying on stuff that you've already created, and so it's going to be dinged a little bit for that. So, as a result, while I think Dune Part 2 should win, my pick this year is going to be Wicked will win Best Production Design.
I have will win and should win as Wicked. Um, when you consider how they had to design it with all the flies and with uh, the harnesses and the wires to have the characters flying around and everything else, it was just a lot. And and to do it while they're singing and still be able to record. To me, it just hands down the best production design for this year.
All right. Let's move to Best Costume Design, yet another technical award here. The nominees are A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. I will say that I think the costume designing on Wicked will win, but, and this is maybe an odd one, but for the period accuracy and kind of getting into the characters, and as much as it was almost a character to itself in this movie, I'm going to go out on a limb and say A Complete Unknown should win this category this year.
I thought about that, but and it was close for me. This was supposed to be my category leading
I'm
off
sorry.
anyway.
You're right.
But okay, that's all right. I understand. You're just anxious.
Well, you got the opportunity to pick second again, so
Yeah. I have will win, and I have Wicked should win. I like Complete Unknown, um, but I don't think it was quite as dramatic of costume design as Wicked was.
the only difference I have is that Wicked can rely, one, on the original film, The Wizard of Oz, as part of its costume designing, and two, can rely on the musical as kind of a basis for where it was going. Now, you can easily then dismiss my claims that A Complete Unknown, well, you're relying on pictures of Bob Dylan in the 60s. True,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I thought that the costume designing was more of a character to that film than Wicked's was particularly. By the way, that's throat clear number 2.
I know.
Let's see how many we can get up to, folks. We should take a bet. Over under 5.5 on the overall live feed. You can answer that on the chat.
Sure.
All right. So I'll let you take the next two if you really so choose, then, so that it's evened out. But next we have
Sure.
Best International Film. And this is kind of a 50-50 category because unlike other years where we've had a international film up for Best Picture as of recent, and that basically crowns what will win in this category, we actually have two from this category up for Best Picture this year. So the nominees are I'm Still Here, which is Brazil's entry. And I just, for my own sake, okay, let me get on my soapbox for about 1 minute here and say the fact that the Oscar goes to the country and they all can enter one is stupid. When we have such an international Oscars voting body anymore, eliminate this shit. Just go to the best international film, period. We don't need this nominating board or whatever else. So, in case France has two really good films, they can get in. Oh, how dare they make two good films in 1 year?
I know.
Like, we take all the UK favorites and all the United States favorites and make them acceptable. I don't get it. Anyway, soapbox over. But I'm Still Here for Brazil. The Girl with the Needle from Denmark. We have Amelia Perez from France, which is kind of weird. The Seed of the Sacred Fig from Germany, and Flow from Latvia. So, if you would like to start here.
Will win. I'm Still Here. Should win. I'm Still Here. You gonna try and differentiate?
Do I really want to stake? I will say, I agree with you. I'm Still Here is a far superior film, and we
Yes.
will get to it when we talk Best Picture favorites. But do I really want to stake my fate on a bad movie or what most people consider to be a bad movie winning? I'm torn here. All right, fuck it. Because I want to root for I'm Still Here. We'll go the same here.
Oh. Bark, 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 bark.
I know. But I don't want to win because Amelia Perez won. How sad is that?
Uh,
Anyway, we both saw this film a couple of weeks ago. You tried to talk about it, I think, on last week's pod, but
yeah,
I thought we could address it here. We'll wait until Best Picture, though, to truly address both of those films.
yes,
Unfortunately, I have not seen any of the other three films that are nominated this year. Just, I haven't been able to get to everything.
yeah.
I know that there are a lot of people that thought The Seed of the Sacred Fig was an excellent movie, including our former president, Barack Obama, but I had no time to get to it. In amongst the 10 favorites that were up, I'm glad that two international favorites were in that category so I could get to both of them, but I just simply ran out of time. All right. Best Supporting Actor. We have another of the top line categories. The nominees are Yura Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. I believe you can lead off here.
Will win Kieran Culkin. Should win Kieran Culkin.
Okay. I have differentiated with you only on should win. It seems like of any of the four acting categories, this is the most foregone conclusion that Culkin will win. Fine. I have no real complaints about it. He's a terrific actor. He's kind of an eccentric person, but he's a good actor. And it's a very, very good performance. But I have him third on my personal ballot. I think what Jeremy Strong does to imbue Roy Cohn in that movie is exceptional. And whether or not you like that movie overall, to me, he's doing a better performance than Culkin. But I think Guy Pearce in The Brutalist is putting in an all-time performance. And so to me, he should win, but he won't.
I loved The Brutalist, and all I thought Guy Pearce was doing was just being angry. I didn't see
Oh,
a lot of subtlety in his performance.
I vehemently disagree. I think
Okay.
he is the best part of that movie. He is the anti-white savior. Anyway, we'll get to it a little bit later. I don't want to preempt what will likely be a very good discussion.
Okay.
Anyway, all right, so let's move to best visual effects here. The nominees are Alien Romulus, which I have not seen, Better Man, which nobody in the United States has seen, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. So I've seen two of these movies. You have seen two of these movies. I don't think we're going to talk a ton about all of these, but if there's any category in which Dune Part 2 is really a competitive player, it's likely this category. So
Yep.
I have that as will win. And frankly, Denny should win again for Dune Part 2 because this movie should get a lot more attention than it is. But again, we will save that for the best picture race. I have it will win and should win.
Same. I'm not going to add anything more to it. I did not get a chance to do Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Better Man, or Alien Romulus. So I'm flying at this one a little blind, but I do think that Dune Part Two's visual effects were very stunning.
All right, let's go to best film editing then. We have the nominees as Anora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez, and Wicked. And I believe you lead off. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have will win Conclave, should win Conclave. I thought the editing was crisp. It was one of the best parts of it. The editing did a phenomenal job of keeping you um, moving through the story and not letting anything lag during any portion of it. I thought it was phenomenal um, methods and choices in editing.
All right. I think this is one where I have a very easy choice, and I'm going to be glad to root for this film over your choice. I have Anora winning, will win, and should win. I think Sean Baker, this may be one of 4 Oscars he wins on Sunday night or next Sunday night. But both movies we will be discussing, later. In fact, we will be discussing all 5 of these nominees later because it would be unusual for any of the 5 in editing to not be up for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Best Documentary Short, then. The nominees are Death by Numbers, I Am Ready, Warden, Incident, Instruments of a Beating Heart, and The Only Girl in the Orchestra. Now, I can only make a pick on what I think will win. I have not seen any of these movies. You said though that you got through all 5, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I will let you make the should win and a good case as to which one I should probably watch first because I will try and get to these. We said it last year when we really started getting going on the shorts that both you and I, Dad, very much like the shorts. And frankly, I think there should be a streaming service that caters specifically to the shorts. With the short attention spans of people anymore, and the fact that TikTok and Instagram Reels and Facebook stuff, the videos are very short. You could create a very good film service on the backing of these short movies. And in several categories, we'll get to the live action shorts later. I think it's well worth your time this year. Animated short this year, not quite so much. I thought the animated shorts were better last year. But all right, will win for me. I have Incident.
Oh. Okay. Well, I have I Am Ready, Warden is the will win. Um, but I had Incident as the best one. Um, I just really enjoyed it. It was thought provoking. They used actual surveillance film. It was a little disturbing because you actually saw live or film, or I mean,
Like
film
body
of somebody
cams.
actually being shot and killed.
Wow.
Um, and maybe I'm a little desensitized to it because I did criminal defense work and stuff, and some of this stuff is not unusual to me having or to watch, but
Hmm.
it was quite impactful, and it is clear how um, quickly things can escalate and how people's perceptions of things are different. I am glad that uh, we live in a society now with a lot of surveillance or film or video available, and with police with body cams. There's not a lot of privacy anymore, but by the same token, it does open up your eyes as to what reality is and how quickly it is that we can try to justify or hide the real circumstances of situations. If you have any questions about police, and I'm not saying this is an anti-police because I'm not anti-police. What I have a problem with is that we have a lot of police officers. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There's some police officers who have some difficulties and should maybe not be police officers. And if you watch this film, um, I think you'll realize that um, some people are not meant to be police officers, and experience makes a difference.
Is there anything you wanted to say about any of the other nominees here?
I really liked The Only Girl in the Orchestra. Um, and I thought it was real interesting. She was the daughter of um, two Hollywood stars, and I'm drawing a blank.
Hmm.
O'Brien, who had been um, a Republic film star, and her mother had been a leading lady. and then she ended up becoming the bass violinist for the New York Metropolitan, and the first female to be in the orchestra. And it was a very interesting film to see her career and uh, how her life was impacted both by her Hollywood parents as well as her love of music.
Very cool. All right. Now, best documentary. I have to admit, I did not get to any of these films. I think you got to a couple of them. I don't know how many you've finished. Some of these were very, very long. But the nominees for this are Black Box Diaries, No Other Land, Porcelain War, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and Sugarcane. I believe you are set to lead.
Um, no Other Land will win. I had Sugarcane as the uh, should win. I got to see three of the four. I got to see No Other Land, Porcelain Wars, and Sugarcane. I did not get to Black Box Diaries or Soundtrack of a Coup d'etat. Wish I would have, because I do enjoy these. Um, some of them can be a little down or depressing to me. No Other Land is the story about resettlement off the West Bank and the travesty both for Palestinian and Israelis that goes on with this. Um, but I liked Sugarcane. I thought it was well done. Um, and so that's where I'm going.
I also had No Other Land as my will win, so we do not differ on this category. Unfortunately, I do not have any background to be able to give a should win, so I'll refrain from this category. So we'll move to best cinematography. The nominees for this one are three from the best picture list, and then Maria and Nosferatu. But the nominees are The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. Is it my pick to start? I believe.
Yes.
I have The Brutalist will and should winning.
I agree. The scene with the train wreck, in and of itself, uh, would win best cinematography. It was just phenomenal. The way it was shot, not to mention um, the how to put it, they had a way of shooting this that allowed a kind of a dark background that you knew something was coming up um, without really foreshadowing it. Um,
I agree. The use of light in this in
yeah,
multiple different instances is exceptional. And without, again, getting too far into our conversation that will be coming when we talk about our best picture rankings, I just think by far it's the best use of cinematography in all of these. That's not to say that I don't think Dune Part 2 is exceptional as well, but I think The Brutalist is operating on a different level and much in the same way that we'll talk about in a few other categories that we haven't talked about yet. The cinematography for The Brutalist is a character that's complementary to the film and is part of the storytelling in a way that while Dune Part 2 is shot magnificently, I just don't know if I find it has quite the same complementary statement that The Brutalist does. All right. So yet another agreement between the two of us there. All right. Then let's move to the best live action short here. The nominees are Alien, Anuja, I'm Not a Robot, The Last Ranger, and The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. I believe it is yours to start.
will win the man who could not remain silent, and should win the man who could not remain silent.
I would say it's a very worthy entrant, and if you have not seen that film, it is well worth your time. I don't know how available it's going to be to everyone, but it's clearly a very good um, film. However, thank you for whoever commented that he loves his Patton Oswalt. I still can't figure out which of the two of us is supposed to be Patton Oswalt, but fair enough. Thank you very much for writing in. And like I said, if you do have comments, I appreciate them. So certainly keep them coming. But
Well, somebody's watching at least.
yes, at least we're not talking into the ether by ourselves. But regardless, certainly keep the comments and questions coming. But to me, while The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent is a very good movie, there was just one that hit me a little bit harder, and I have Alien as my should win.
Okay.
I think it speaks a little bit more to the moment at what we're in, and maybe that's why it hits me just a little bit harder than The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. But I think there were some exceptional films in this category this year, and if you have to pick any one of the shorts, I definitely think that these are probably worth your time more than at least the animated, but since I haven't watched the documentaries, I can't comment on that too. All right. Then we get to best sound. And as I said before, how The Substance was not a nominee for best sound is beyond
Yeah.
me. That movie is made by its sound.
Yeah.
But okay, what the hell do I know? The nominees here are A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. So let's throw out the three musicals essentially, a children's movie with basically all sound effects, and Dune Part 2 that's got a lot of machinery that's operating in the background over the film that uses the enhancement of sound to complement its movie. Good job, Oscars. Anyway, is it I forget. Is it your turn or my turn?
Uh,
I think it's my turn.
I think it is.
Okay. Will win and should win is Dune Part 2. Of the 5 that are here, I think it's clearly the superior film where okay, you have some good musical stuff, but how is it really enhancing your film? Whereas at least the sound in Dune Part 2, and again, I keep focusing on this, when it's a character in the movie, when it's enhancing and complementing what's actually going on screen and helping to tell the story, that's part of it. The only other one that I could make a case for out of these 5 that I really felt was anywhere close to that is A Complete Unknown. But outside of that, I think Dune Part 2 is a runaway will and should win.
Well, I have differed. I
Okay.
think that the will win is Wicked and should win is Wicked, and it's not because of the music. It's because of all the other things: the train, the crowd noises, the wind, all of that stuff that impacted the film outside of the normal music. I think it played a huge part in the overall story. It helped foster the 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 variations in scenes. I thought it was well done, and so that's where I'm going with it. Is Wicked.
All right. I'll be happy to root for Dune over Wicked, even though I very much liked both films. All right. Then let's get to best score. The nominees for this are The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. I believe you lead.
I have will win the Brutalist, and should win. I have the Brutalist.
And I will say I have both of those as well. Again, goes back to the same argument I keep stating. The one with the most contributing to a characterization and complementary of what's going on screen should be the winner. To me, this is the one that most clearly does that. All right. And I know we're moving very rapidly through a lot of these technical categories, so we're not slowing down to talk about usually a lot of films that are nominated for best picture, partially because we're going to be getting to that once we get to our best picture rankings. So you will get our full discussion of the entirety of the movie in an individualized category, but that is going to be near the end of this. And thank you, Mr. Corns, for watching. All right, best original song, which will be a little bit potentially controversial. This is the first year in at least my recent memory where they're not going to have live performances of all 5 of the songs. I mean, given that we had the Gosling explosion last year, it would be hard to top that this year.
Yeah.
That was a seminal moment of the Oscars that wasn't at least negative.
And the
But
winner is
this year to watch the Oscars try and do 2 songs from Emilia Perez, I'm okay with them not doing that this year.
yeah.
So, the nominees are El Mal from Emilia Perez, The Journey from the 6888, and I will say this is the music and lyric by the great Diane Warren. This is this is almost getting to the level of like Meryl Streep being nominated every year at the Oscars. Diane Warren has a song nominated every year at the Oscars, but we'll get to that. I have the other nominees are Like a Bird from Sing Sing, Mi Camino from Emilia Perez, and Never Too Late from Elton John, Never Too Late, the documentary. Is it mine to lead or you? I think it's me.
You lead.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be a little bit out on a line, but I think Diane Warren finally gets off the snide this year and she finally wins her Oscar. So we could stop talking about it. Partially due to the fact that Emilia Perez is kind of like on its way down and nobody really wants to overly award that film. And also because, again, I don't really want to have to root for Emilia Perez to win something in order to beat you. So I'm going to go with The Journey from the 6888 as will win. Should win, however, oddly enough, I think it's Never Too Late from Elton John.
Oh, I thought I was going to be the only one picking that.
Interesting.
Because I listened to the songs, and I think that El Mal will win because they're going to throw a bone to Amelia Perez simply because they don't want it to be a major controversy or somehow the entire controversy being blamed for everything. So I think it will win. But I think Never Too Late is the best song and should win.
Anything more you want to say about these?
Nope. I sat and listened to the songs. Well, I knew that the two from Amelia Perez, and I knew Like a Bird. I listened to it briefly again. I listened to Triple Eight, but then I listened to the Elton John Never Too Late. I have to watch that documentary, by the way. I really think it would be good, but that song is rather poignant and I don't know, it's kind of meaningful. It's not as much of an earworm as some of Elton's songs, but
If
still,
if you
uh,
watch the video that corresponds it on YouTube, it
yeah,
actually has like footage from the documentary
yeah,
complementing it. So I think that is part of what locked it in for me. So maybe it's a little bit of a bias comparatively, but that's fair. I will say I agree somewhat with Andrew that I'm Just Ken and I can't remember how to pronounce it, but the song from RRR 2 years ago, winning in consecutive years and live performances of both of those, it would have been very difficult to top either of those performances, but particularly I'm Just Ken that I did sneak back and rewatch this week, I will say.
yeah.
It'll be kind of weird that Ryan Gosling's not at the Oscars this year. Although maybe he will be. Who knows? Maybe he'll do a bit with Conan. All right. We only have top of the line categories left. So at this point, we have Best Actor. And I believe you lead off this category, but the nominees are Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes for Conclave. I almost did Ralph there. Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Will win. I believe at this point it's likely Adrian Brody. And for anybody who's not tuned into us live and is watching the SAG Awards right now, those will probably be the final indicators of who may or may not win these awards. We unfortunately do not have that perspective because we're doing this at the same time, but I think he is likely to win. But my should win, I just think Chalamet is a much better performance. And I am very critical. And in this moment, I am being very hypocritical over people playing people who existed. But this is one of those rare feats where somebody embodies somebody else and it's not an impersonation. And I don't feel the level of vitriol that I have in other years towards somebody winning in this particular case. I am okay if Adrian Brody wins. I could also say that I think that Sebastian Stan playing Trump is an exceptional performance as well. But for me, Chalamet, and I know that's going to be controversial for some, but I thought he was the best performer of this year.
For me, I think will win is Brody, but I also agree that Chalamet had the best performance. Um, I thought Brody had an advantage because his mother was Hungarian, and my guess is he grew up speaking Hungarian, and she was a refugee from the '56 Hungarian Revolution, um, and so a lot of this, the accent,
I don't
I
want to
don't think it was a big
discount his
stretch for him.
performance because the little details he didn't have to go over as profusely as Chalamet taking 5 years to learn how to do Dylan's particular singing style and accent with it.
Not just that, 5 years he learned how to play the guitar. He didn't even know how to play the guitar when he was first cast. He learned how to play the guitar in those 5 years and became fairly proficient.
But I don't want to focus on the little pieces of that at all. To me, it's how it ends up translating on screen that is a better thing. And that's why if you have Brody or you have Stan or you have even Domingo to me winning this category, I really don't have a terribly great argument because I think they're all exceptional performances this year. But for me, Chalamet was the chief among those. So
Hmm.
let's, well, I'll let you finish.
No, I agree, and I think you I think you lost yourself as that this was not an actor. You kind of felt that this was Dylan. I don't know how he managed to do it, but he seemed well able to. Um, Too many of these biopics, they end up becoming an impression instead of an embodiment. He did the
Agreed.
embodiment.
But can we also just stop this conversation over whether he's a good actor or not? He's a good actor. Like, can we bury that for now?
I think part of the problem is he's young, he's good looking, and I don't know if there's a certain level of jealousness or jealousy about it or what, but yeah,
I don't think that's it for everybody. I do think that some people don't like his performances. But whether you like his performances or not, can we please just stop with the whether he's a good actor or not? He's a good actor. And then move on.
sure.
There's an objective and then there's a subjective. Objectively, he's a good actor. Period. All right, let's move to best director then. The nominees are Jacques Audiard for Amelia Perez, Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, Coralie Fargeet for The Substance, and James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. I believe this is the first time in decades that we have 5 first-time nominees in this category.
Yeah.
But it is yours to lead.
Will win Sean Baker for Anora. Should win Brady Corbet for The Brutalist.
I have a feeling this is going to be part of our discussion for the best picture winners later. So let's save that. I also have Sean Baker winning, but I also think he should win. If that's any indication of where our rankings may end up by the end of this discussion. But all right, let's quickly move to best actors before we get to our rankings. So, best actress, the nominees are Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison for Anora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. I believe I lead off here. This is so hard. And it's probably going to come down to this. But since I think there's a groundswell behind this, I'm going to be a little bit audacious. I know the favorite at this point is Demi Moore. I think she's the prohibitive favorite. But the way the Oscars has panned out over the last couple of years, it's like 2 or 3 films have really dominated the night. Oppenheimer last year, before that, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So if this truly is the moment that Anora gets crowned, and I think it's only up for like 5 or 6 awards,
Ooh.
I'm going to go Mikey Madison will win, and I think she should win.
Okay. All right.
So if this is what loses me the bet, I'm okay with it.
All right.
Especially since I'm going to have to apparently edit your episode or your punishment anyway. So how is it really like serving me?
I told you not to bother, but okay.
Nah, you recorded it. It should be edited at least slightly. Get our little niche branding and such on it.
All right. Whatever.
All right. So are you
I
going to
have
take the
Will
low
win
hanging?
as Demi Moore.
Yeah, you took the low hanging fruit. Okay.
Well, of course I did.
I,
Because, and it's not because it just seems like it's fitting because, I mean, she's been through a lot. She had
yeah.
a long career. She's had the last the last 10 to 15 years has been kind of a mess for her. Her
Yeah.
divorce, then her second divorce, then her still hanging around with Bruce with going through his problems. Um, so I think she's kind of what everybody in Hollywood is rooting for, especially the actresses, because here's somebody who's 62, I believe, um, who all of a sudden now gets her crowning achievement. I think that this is going to be the one that everybody in Hollywood's rooting for. Now, as far as should win, in retrospect and thinking back through everything, I think Fernanda Torres should win. I thought her performance was phenomenal, um, and I liked it as the best of any of the 5 in the category.
I know this is a little hot takey here. While I would love the story of Demi Moore winning, I think it's in some ways like a token or a makeup Oscar. And I think there are much better performances this year. I know. Am I going to really push hard that she shouldn't have won? No. But is she like even in the top? Well, I guess she's in the top 3 because I didn't think that much of a Revo's performance in Wicked. And Gascon, what are we doing here? Anyway.
No.
But I think there were 2 performances that were well ahead of everybody else. It's Torres and it's Madison for me. So if she does win, great. I'm not going to really fight anybody, but yeah.
Who are you going to fight?
I apparently people on Twitter or TikTok or YouTube or whatever else that are watching this later. So, all right. So to recap for the should wins, because I do think that Best Picture, we will differ, but the prediction of what should win, or excuse me, what will win Best Picture is pretty well locked in at this point. If it doesn't win, it'll be a shock, but I can't see either of us picking differently. So the categories where we differ, we have Best Animated Short. I have Wander to Wonder, and you have Beautiful Men. Then scrolling. This is great podcast producing, by the way. Anora and Conclave splitting on Best Film Editing. So that's number 2. We are split on Best Documentary Short. I have Incident, and you have I Am Ready, Warden. Then we also split on Best Sound. So that's number 4 with Dune Part 2 and Wicked. We split on Best Original Song, as oddly enough, we regularly split on this category. I have The Journey from 6888 and Diane Warren's First Win. You have El Mal for Emilia Perez. And then we split on Best Actress. You have Demi Moore and I have Mikey Madison. So I believe that's 6 categories. Now, as we always do, we have a tiebreaker just in case as a backup. And because you lost last year, you get to select first. Now, the terms, before I let you select, our annual Oscars bet is that the other person has to do a film of the other person's choosing and do a full episode in the style of the show, which will not be part of the official catalog. It's just a bonus episode, and you get to have a lot of schadenfreude for this particular person. Dad, you just had to watch and record a show on Simon Says, the great action film starring Dennis Rodman and Dane Cook that will be out on the feed, hopefully before the Oscars next weekend in order to satisfy the bet, but you have recorded it.
Yes.
And the previous 2 years, I had to record one on Batman and Robin, the terrible Joel Schumacher sequel to the other Batman movies, I suppose. And then Ed Wood's Glenn or Glenda. And you can find those back out on the feed. They are still available. They're still up. There's entries on the website, so you can find those too. Dana's punishment video will be in full video. It's the first time our punishment videos have been in video, so you can see his anguish live. But all right. With that in mind, before I let you select your tiebreaker, what movie have you selected for me this year?
Left Behind with Nick Cage.
Okay. A wonderful choice. Constantly ranked as one of the worst movies ever made.
Well, of course, Nick can't be overacting.
Yeah. And for you, because I really love to rub your nose in it, St. Elmo's Fire.
I almost walked out of it. I did not.
I know you vehemently hate that movie.
Oh,
and
terrible.
As such, this will be the only time that we may ever talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
So,
also a big Demi Moore feature.
Yes. But with that, all right, in memoriam tiebreaker. Now, again, the rules for the in memoriam tiebreaker: the person you select has to appear later than the other person they selected during the telecast. Is that clear for people?
Yes.
Okay. So you get to go first on who you select, and I get to go second. So who have you selected?
Luke, I am your father. James Earl Jones.
A very worthy pick. I had him highlighted probably as my number 1. Now, some people that you could have named: Donald Sutherland, Maggie Smith, Carl Weathers, Louis Gossett Jr., Quincy Jones.
Yes.
Would have been a really good one, especially because he is an honorary recipient this year at the Governor's Awards. And Dabney Coleman was another one that I think you could have highlighted. But I will go as well with some low-hanging fruit on this one. And just because of how influential he is, I very much thought about taking Quincy Jones, but I'm going to ultimately go with David Lynch.
Ah, okay.
So In the case of a tiebreaker, if James Earl Jones appears after David Lynch in the telecast of the Oscars during the in memoriam section, you will be declared the winner. And we will let everybody know on Twitter and probably Instagram. I don't know if Andrew will be available to put that out for us, but we'll try and let everybody know in our audience who the winner of the annual Oscars bet is and what movie they have to do immediately following the Oscars, or maybe during the Oscars if there's no way that there's something that can upend it. So we'll keep track of that as we go. All right. Now we get to the heart of it. We have our best picture rankings. The nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Now, I have to imagine that before we get to the rankings, we can probably just say at this point, Anora would be a very unlikely film not to win.
Yes.
It has won the Critics' Choice Awards. It has won the DGA, the WGA, the Producers Guild. It's on course. It's not that it would be unprecedented if it didn't win, but the only other film to win all of those and not win at this point was Brokeback Mountain. And you all know how that went.
Yeah.
So I fully expect Emilia Perez to be crowned on Oscar night. Anyway.
Sure.
Oh, that would be something, wouldn't it? Okay. But I have Anora winning. So do you as well?
That is correct.
Okay.
Man, it makes no sense to do anything else.
All right. So we're just going to get that out of the way as far as a prediction. Now we're going to talk about what we think should win, and we will rank each of these. Now, in order to do this in a fair manner, we're going to list off in order our 10s, and we'll go down the list until it appears on both of our lists.
Okay. So
Easy
we're going to
enough
start with
structure?
our number 1.
No, we're going to start with our number 10 and work backward.
Okay.
So, would you like to go first or second?
I will go first.
Okay.
Number
What is
10.
your number 10? All right.
Yes, Emilia Perez. Of the 10 films.
No. We're not talking about it until it's appeared on both of our lists.
Okay.
All right. So my number 10 is Conclave.
Number 9, The Substance.
Okay. Number 9 for me is Emilia Perez. All right. Now you could go.
Okay. Of the 10 films on this list, Emilia Perez was the one that did not work for me at all. I thought that the story was rather implausible. How you could, pretend to be your own sister and your wife and children, not have any clue that there wasn't something correct here. The fact that you're breaking into song in weird places throughout the film.
You didn't like the penis vagina song?
Oh God. I'm like, I'm like, I had a hard time with this. I had a hard time with this film, the entire one. All the other 9, I didn't, some of them didn't speak to me. The Substance was okay. Dune, I've never been a big, fantasy, sci-fi guy, but I could see it as quality. But Emilia Perez just never struck a chord with me. I'm just sitting there going, okay, well, let's see. How long has this thing got to go here? Oh, fuck. All right, good. I guess it's getting close. Well, I think I need to take a pause because I have something more important to do. Oh, yeah, I need to clean my toilet.
When's the last time you actually cleaned a toilet though?
Yesterday.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. Great. All right. For me, I know that this movie grossly offends a lot of people, and I will say that if you want somebody who is much more capable of addressing the objections that others have, particularly of whether it's a French film that's set in Mexico, but not really representative of Mexicans, it's not really apparently speaking to trans people, and it just apparently pisses everybody off.
Not to mention the fact that Gomez doesn't even speak Spanish. She had to learn it to do the film. Selena Gomez does not speak Spanish, and everybody was complaining about how bad her Spanish was.
Okay, fine. All those complaints and whatever else. From a complete place of ignorance as a upper middle class white male professional who has no claim to be in any of these groups, I was not offended in any way by the movie. Did I think it was kind of silly and incredibly flawed? Sure. Is it at best like a 7 out of 10? Sure. Is it by far probably the worst objectively quality picture that's probably up here? Sure. Why did I put it ahead of Conclave? You will find out eventually once we kind of get your ranking for Conclave. But I enjoyed or was entertained by the movie, even though it's crap, or at least it's not like best picture worthy. I don't know. It's fine, but it's aggressively fine, even from somebody who wasn't offended by the movie.
Okay,
Now,
I didn't
if I
say
were offended by the movie, I'm sure that I would have my issues, but
I wasn't offended by the movie. There's nothing to be offended by the movie. I just didn't think that it struck a chord with me at all because I couldn't understand exactly what it was supposed to be. Are you talking about this as being some sort of, big uh concept of trying to help or promote trans people? If it was, it missed the mark. Whether you were talking about this being some sort of, you know, it didn't hit anything. I don't have, it didn't offend me. Nothing here offended me. It's just a matter of I just thought it was poorly executed.
and that's fair. I don't think that you're going to have too many detractors from that opinion with having it dead last in your rankings. And
I
to be
I
fair, it's second to last in mine, but it's only for one very specific reason that we will eventually get to. So,
I thought September 5th was better, and I thought Real Pain was better.
him being in director is much more of a problem for me than it being in best picture, but I still have a problem probably with both because there are better films. I agree. All right. We've spent enough time on that. And this is not a hate watch podcast. We like to celebrate movies.
Yes.
All right. What is your number 8?
Dune.
Okay. My number 8 is The Substance. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
I think it's a well done quality film
Mm-hmm.
for about 80%. And the last 20 minutes to me goes so much further than it needed to. And I know that horror is not my genre. If you're mad at me for commenting on the body horror genre, just know I don't probably know what I'm talking about. I'm just doing this from a subjective value of how it hit me. And this is not something I like to watch. So if you want to talk to people that actually regularly watch horror films and have a much better perspective on this, that's fine. You can skip right over it. I'm sure there will be a chapter generation where you can just move on. But for me, I thought it was much better and more executed when it was a subtle film. And the minute it just went so grossly, it hit the peak of an exponential gross out film. It just went from me to being something that was smart and clever to something that lost the thread. And so for me, if anything, that's why I probably have it this low because I think it is excelling for 80% of the film better than a few of the other films that I have ahead of this. But the last 20 minutes just put such a sour taste in my mouth that I can't put it any higher than this.
Okay. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the last portion of the film where it was so over the top with violence that it became hilarious, releasing all the tension built up through the entire film. Okay. The Substance almost became hilarious to me. I'm sitting there almost laughing at it.
Because you're a Monty Python fan and you remember Meaning of Life. It's
Yeah.
essentially a horror version of the Meaning of Life.
And I can understand the symbolism where she's spewing blood all over the audience, which is, my body shaming is, the blood of my, what I've done to myself is on you for what you're demanding. I can understand the symbolism of it, but it was comical to me. And so that's why that really did sink the film up to that point. Up to then, I thought I understood. The only other thing I would point out is one of the reasons I ranked it down is you could have cut about 30 to 40 minutes out of that film and it would have been a lot better. How many times do you need to see the transition back and forth? I mean, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I thought it was too long, and then the last scene was comical to me when I know it wasn't supposed to be. So that's why it ranked down for me to
So
9.
that is your number 9, and that is my number 8. All right. Your number 7, please.
I have Anora.
I know this is an audio medium, but you're gonna have to imagine for anybody, for anybody on audio and not watching the video, either on YouTube Live or later on, just watch me shake my head. All right.
Yeah.
My number 7 is A Complete Unknown.
Okay.
Your number 6, please.
Wicked.
All right. My number 6 is Nickel Boys.
Hmm. Number 5, I'm Still Here.
You got to talk into the mic, Dad.
Okay, sorry. My number 5 is I'm Still Here.
Yet another moment where we're live and I can't edit that out.
Whatever.
Okay. My number 5 is Wicked. So let's talk about that one.
I really liked Wicked, but I had to rank them on what I thought of each of the films and the quality involved. And so I thought Wicked did a really good job. Um, and I have no qualms with it. I was surprised at how well I liked it. We went to see it. I knew nothing about it. I did not know the play, any of the songs or anything else, and was pleasantly surprised as to how much I enjoyed it. But again, I just think that the other five cat or films in this category were better.
I agree with you. It is a very good film that I was very surprised by. So, in my fight annually with expectations, which is part of the reason that I will get to why Conclave is my number 10, but Wicked defied my expectations, tongue in cheek, pun intended, and took off. It got into flight in a way that I was not expecting. And I thought Ariana Grande similarly when I picked her for should win in Best Supporting Actress was exceptional in a way that I just did not anticipate. But there are better films. It's existing off of a musical that is very popular and that a lot of people know. And while they did a good job capturing that magic and putting it on screen, for some people like you and I, for the first time, kind of becoming familiarized with it, it's very good. But are there better films? Yes. Ones that actually contain a full story instead of extending out an IP musical into 2 parts. It's the middle of the pack in this. So that's my number 5 and your number 6. Don't have a lot of complaints. It's just I like some other films more.
Okay.
All right, so I believe we're at your number 4.
Conclave.
All right. And I have at number 4 The Brutalist. So Conclave is up. It was your number 4. It is my number 10. Would you like to lead?
Go ahead, rip it apart. I don't care. I'm going to resurrect it.
I think it's probably a better quality film. It just from a subjective standpoint, where you went and saw it, and of course, it is like a total dad movie. But this is an airport novel adapted. And the thrills of this, I'm like, It's a bunch of stuffy old guys trying to pick another stuffy old guy to lead a dead institution. Like, this isn't that great of a thriller. And the turn at the end means nothing to me because I'm not a lapsed Catholic. I have no real affiliation with the Catholic Church. It being potentially progressive means almost nothing to me. So I just found myself incredibly bored by this. I thought, I'm sure this is great for some people, but it does nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. And the only reason it's my number 10 is because even though I know it's objectively better than Amelia Perez, at least Amelia Perez, I was entertained. Conclave, I'm like, okay, when is it over?
Okay, that's fine.
So go
I,
ahead.
I I
Tell
enjoyed
us
it
why
from
it's the ultimate dad movie.
I enjoyed it from moment I started until the moment it ended, and the twists and plot turns. It was kind of a light thriller to me. The acting, I really enjoyed Ray Fiennes. I really enjoyed John Lithgow. I really enjoyed Stanley Tucci. But then again, those are three of my favorite actors. So, I mean, it was just I just there was nothing about the story that I didn't like. It was a mystery, and now, quite frankly, it looks like we may be going through an enclave or a conclave again here shortly because the Pope doesn't seem to be in very good health right at the moment, unfortunately.
I think that's
Um,
unfair Oscars campaigning.
Maybe, I guess. I mean, I'm not a Catholic, but I really like the Pope. I like Pope Francis. I thought he was a really breath of fresh air to bring the Jesuit concepts back into the church more in the forefront. But I mean, I love the film. I mean, I watched the film, I saw it, I watched it again, and I still enjoyed it. I mean, in fact, this is a film that I think I could rewatch every couple of years and enjoy again. So sorry.
You can put that on for your 96th birthday triple feature, and it will not be a movie I come back into the room for.
Okay,
Anyway, all right. So your number 3 then.
a complete unknown.
All right, let's talk about it here. It was my number 7, it's your number 3.
I thought it was a really well done film. The acting I thought was great, both of the female leads and both Chalamet and Ed Norton were phenomenal. I loved the story. I didn't know a whole lot about Bob Dylan. When I finished, I wanted to know more about Bob Dylan and his music than I did. And it just struck a chord with me. Um, Pun intended.
Stuck
Stuck
a chord,
stuck a chord with me, yes.
struck.
Struck. Struck a chord with me. Pun intended. Anyway, um, so I just enjoyed the film from start to finish. Um, I drug your mother to it. I think she was not looking forward to it. And she walked out very happy that she had seen it. She really liked it. And so, again, this may be just, the middle aged um mentality of the film, but I really just thought it was a finely done film and really enjoyed the entire thing. I just, in fact, earlier today finished the article from several weeks ago um, in the Hollywood Reporter with the cast and director um, for a complete unknown, and really was quite impressed with the production and the story behind the film, and just think they did a fine job.
Okay. I think it's a very good film, but I think it's a very good film. It's not a great film. there are a couple of things that I think limit it. One, while James Mangold is able to bring you into the intimacy of an artist with their music in a way that I don't think we get a lot with these musical biopics. And I'll be honest, I knew nothing really about Bob Dylan as a figure or really much about his music. I knew basically one song, and it's the one song that you'd think I would know before
Yeah,
going into the movie.
you.
I, nothing of that was just picked up, Dad. So I don't know what you were doing because you're not talking into the mic.
The
Anyway,
mic's right here.
yeah, and you leaned back. Anyway, beside the point. What I will say is that while I think this excels in a way that other musical biopics do not, partially due to the direction and due to Chalamet's performance, and I will admit that the first couple of times he just sang and did the songs and I'd never heard them before, I was tearing up. That it was very moving and almost religious in that way. Especially the first one where he's in the hospital room with Guthrie and Edward Norton's character, I thought
Pete
was
Seeger.
Pete Seeger,
Yep.
was extremely well done. And I think Monica Barbaro is excellent in this movie, but does she clear the bar of some of the other people that are up in that category for with her? No. Is she deserving of a nomination? Sure, absolutely. Edward Norton for me, eh. I mean, I'm sure he does a pretty good Pete Seeger impersonation, but to me, it's an impersonation. Whereas Chalamet, I think, gets into the bones of the character and really portrays him. But where this movie for me goes from being a better musical biopic to being just simply a very good movie, but not a great movie, is it loses me in the third act. In some way, as we transition between the periods of Dylan in this early kind of from the early 60s to the late 60s, I still have no idea who he is, what he's about, and why we need to care about his change from folk music to electric music. And somehow that's like the big turn in the film is that he wants to be his own person. Okay, fine. Be your own person, be your own musician. What's the big deal? So for me, because the ending just doesn't land and give me like a so what, I have to knock it down behind several other films that I just thought had a more complete understanding and left me with a better high. And so that's why it's at my 7, but to me it's still quality enough that on a subjective level I enjoyed it more than the 3 I have behind it.
Okay.
All right. So that was your number 3. My number 3 is I'm Still Here. So let's talk
Okay.
about that one. I can go first here.
Go ahead.
Haunting film. Extremely difficult and disturbing. It is representative of a I don't want to say dictatorship, but a um, totalitarian government that does not do well with dissent. And given the rise generally, and again, we've stated this many times across many podcasts that we've done, that generally it is not just the United States where we think this is somewhat on the rise, but globally. This movie put on screen for me a realism that I, as a privileged American, have never really had to experience. And so it bothered me in a good way, but it spoke to me more than several other films that we had here and really kind of touched me in that regard. I thought it was a well done film. I thought it was well acted. I thought it loses it a little bit at the end, which is why it's at 3 and not a little bit higher. But I think the overall quality of the message, even though it gets a little bit rushed in its maybe last 20 minutes where it starts pushing through time to kind of give you the modern updates of where the story's at, and it kind of fast forwards a little bit, it still gives you a really good picture at what can happen in a society where the government is not representative of the people, but representative of itself.
Okay. I loved the film. Okay, don't get me wrong. I had some problems with it. I thought they spent a little bit too much time with the initial disappearance of the husband and could have spent more time developing um, the wife's life and how she had to adapt over time to become the head of the household and to raise the kids by herself. It just kind of seemed that it we spent 3/4 of the film in that mode, and then all of a sudden the last quarter we rushed for the last 25 or 30 years. And
And
I would have liked to have seen a little more balance. And so that's the only reason I'm marking it down to 5 on my list.
it's a very hard choice. I get what you're saying, and that's a fair criticism for how the story's told. But I also think that in order for it to be as impactful as it is, you have to get to know the father enough that when he goes missing, that it leaves an impression on screen. And that was going to be hard to. Are there probably a couple more scenes that we needed with him? Probably, but it's a hard balancing act, and I don't fault them a ton for the choice, but I do understand where you're coming from.
Okay. My number 2 is Nickel Boys.
Okay, so that is my number 6. Let's talk about it.
Um, it was a little difficult to get involved in the whole, first person shooting to begin with, but it didn't take me long to figure out what was going on.
You mean first person perspective, just so we clear
Yeah.
that. Yeah, okay.
Um,
For anybody that hasn't seen the movie.
but I thought the story itself and you know um, how easily things happened negatively in young African Americans' lives and the abuse and how horrible things were at a time in the 60s um, for African Americans in general. And even though we were trying to change the world with the civil rights movement, how far we had to go even to have that have any major impact. It just was stark um, and almost stunning to me as to how we always talk about how things were changing and how things were, and but how long it took for the very bottom to rise. And so to me, this had a very meaningful and impactful story behind it that I really thought was brilliantly told.
Okay. This is a difficult film to criticize due to its subject material and how much people love it. But I found the first person perspective, especially for the first like half an hour, 40 minutes, to be burdensome and disorienting. And it helped, or it made me disconnected from the film in a way I wished not to be. I know it's a choice and it's an unusual and to some creative way of filmmaking and storytelling. And I know a lot of people love this movie, but I would have much preferred this be more straight told. And I'll admit that the ending, the surprise ending, I didn't get. I had to read it on Wikipedia because I had a friend who was talking to me about it. And I know you missed it because I asked
Yeah,
you specifically if you understood what the twist ending was, and you had no clue.
no,
And I think that that would have landed a lot better if it's more of a traditional storytelling. Not that you couldn't have some of this perspective, but at a certain point, just breathe some normalcy into it for me so that I can connect with it a little bit better. And not saying that occasionally a new choice or something else, a different form of storytelling can't be a great breath of fresh air. I'm sure to some this is, but just on a subjective level, while I can recognize the importance of this story, I think it's a very well written story. And I think that it's a quality movie. I just can't connect with it in the same ways that I do other things. And so for me, of the ones that I find to be a little bit more than mid from an objective standpoint, I put it at 6 because it's the one that subjectively I just couldn't connect with.
Well, to me, the reason why it was shot from the first person perspective is so that it drew you in, so that you had a connection. You felt the same thing as the character that was being acted upon, so that you had that uncomfortableness.
And I'm glad that it worked for you because there are a lot of people that love this movie, and I wanted to love this movie. It never really worked for me, and I'm sorry that that's the case, but it is.
So it did to me. It spoke. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was extremely impactful, and um,
Now,
so
Ramel Ross being nominated ahead of Jacques Audiard, I think we can both settle that that was a more earned Best Director nomination. But
yeah.
again, this is my number 6, and it is your number 2.
Yep.
All right, my number 2 is Dune Part 2, so let's talk about it.
Okay.
I know you hate sci-fi, so you can get it out of the way. It is your number
It's not
8.
that I necessarily hate it. It just doesn't do
It does
anything
nothing
for
for
me.
you because you can't surrender to a reality that is not your own.
I just don't understand it. I don't enjoy it. And so it doesn't speak to me. So it's very difficult. I can appreciate the quality of the film, but I just can't give it high rankings when I have nothing that connects me. There's no emotional bond with the film. Um, it 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 I remember watching Dune 1. I couldn't tell you what it was like 6 months after what was even going on in the film. And I'm sure in Dune 2, I'm gonna have the same problem because it just did not make any difference to me. I didn't spend time, I didn't invest in it, I didn't have a concern about it. That's all I can say. It
I
was a
know.
really well done film. I have no question about that. But it didn't connect to me.
I know. You're always about nonfiction and not fiction. I am the complete opposite. I prefer fiction to nonfiction. Most times I find nonfiction to be so incredibly boring. But anyway, fantasy to you is what horror is to me. It's just not your category.
Yep.
And I always knew it was going to be a challenge. The fact that you even have it at 8, I think is a little bit impressive. I thought for sure that it would probably be, if you liked Amelia Perez at all, probably at your like ninth or 10th. But fair. The reason I have it at 2 is that I very much enjoy this film. I thought it was early on the favorite for Best Picture and should have rightly been. Had this come out in its original window last year, I could have very easily seen it going up for more awards, having a lot more attention. I'm not sure why they decided to put it out just in March so that, uh, I mean, it ended up making a ton of money. Warner Brothers was happy with it. It got nominated for Best Picture, and now everybody's basically crowning that Dune Messiah will be the one that wins Villeneuve his Oscar or whatever else. Although I would challenge, there's the possibility that any number of other directors comes in and really challenges him. It's not going to be like Peter Jackson necessarily, and we shouldn't overlook this film. From a production value, from a score, from a cinematography value, this is an incredibly quality sci-fi fantasy film about a book that most people thought was unadaptable after David Lynch tried and for a lot of people did not succeed. And to be able to take this material and adapt it in this way that's so appealing to people, I think is a momentous achievement and really cements to me that Denny is probably a top 10 director currently working. And whatever he wants to do, I guess the rumor is that Dune Messiah is going to start filming as soon as this summer.
Okay.
He should get the opportunity to do. I have not seen all of his work, but I've seen several pieces of his work. There are two seminal things that I have to get to yet, probably three. I should probably also watch Incendies at some point. It's just a matter of trying to get to everything, but I still haven't gotten to Blade Runner 2049, which for the Blade Runner fans is apparently an exceptional sequel. And I should also get to Prisoners, which apparently is like Hugh Jackman's best performance on screen. But I haven't gotten to either of those yet. So, but that being said, he has a lot of really great quality films. I think Arrival might be the best sci-fi fantasy film of the 21st century so far. Sicario is a fantastic film. Both Dune movies are fantastic. He deserves to win an Oscar at some point. The difficulties of being live and having to cough. Anyway, so I think there's a lot to be said about this movie. I think that it should be more a part of the conversation. I really hate the fact that as stuff ages out, or we only have like this weird recency bias for things. I don't get it, but for some people that'll make sense. I still think Dune Part 2 is probably going to be the movie that is going to have the most staying power of any of these going forward, other than if Anora wins Best Picture, it will have some level of notoriety for winning Best Picture. But this is the other film that I think will live long term.
Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna have to go with what we're going. We have two films left to discuss. I
Correct.
have my number one as being The Brutalist, and you have Anora. Um, since we both think that's going to win, I suppose I should talk about The Brutalist first.
Yeah, let's do that. You watched it today. I'm
Yep.
hoping to a level that this isn't recency bias, but I will say, even though it's my number 4, it's an exceptional quality film.
Yeah. I was surprised. You kept telling me over and over that I was going to have trouble with it or I wouldn't like it and then of course you made the thing that Mr. Corn said that it was pretentious and that was going to ruin it for me and I'm like, "Oh great."
I
And
want to get
so
him factually correct on the record here. He said, "This is too pretentious even for me," which I knew was going to be like catnip to you, that this was going to be a movie so over the top, even you couldn't stand it.
yeah. And it wasn't. It was to me the story of immigration to the United States. It's the story of trying to rebuild your life. It's the story of what is bizarre or corrupt industrialists. Um, it just struck a chord with me so much. It just, whether you happen to be talking about um, uh, Guy Pearce, or you happen to be talking about the owner of another social media platform who both seem to be trying to fuck people over. Um, you know, it just struck a chord with me through the entire thing. And um, I enjoyed it. I thought it was beautifully shot. There was a couple of moments where it was a little slow for me, but for the most part, it was 3 hours and 20 minutes. But did include the intermission, or but I still enjoyed it and did not see the end coming. Um, I thought I understood what was going on with the scene, and then when she came in and made the accusation, I'm going, "Oh, yeah, I guess that,
Okay,
yeah."
so you didn't get it in the moment. Okay, I was gonna ask about those 2 moments, but before we get to that specific conversation, I can understand how some people's criticism of this movie would be that it's up its own ass. Um, somewhat pun intended. But I think that of any movie where you have an ensemble together, this might be the best ensemble acting of the entire group this year. I
Mhm.
think that it is exceptional acting on almost every front. I think Felicity Jones is exceptional. Obviously, you know my thoughts about Guy Pearce, and I think it's an all-time performance. I really enjoy Adrian Brody. I just have him slightly below Chalamet, as I said. I think it's a well executed film. The production design and value is exceptional for how they do the architecture. I really loved the first few shots of the library with the light on it. But I think the way that they also do the lighting of the stone church, exceptional.
Mhm.
But this is really, to me, an anti-American story, and it kind of unfolds that way. You can see it during the story of the music, you can kind of see it unfold almost backward to what The Godfather is. That this guy comes to America with such great hope and promise, but even from the opening, you should know that the Statue of Liberty being upside down, pointing left or right, is to signify that something's not right in America. And the normal notes that we would get in one of these stories of a capitalist coming in and swooping in and saving the day and being the white savior behind these movies, as Guy Pearce is, that is quite quickly dispelled. Even though he takes
Mhm.
an interest in Toth, it's never to the level where it's not serving his own interests. And you see that quite brutally displayed up until the point where in the theater, when that scene happens, and I knew what was happening immediately, I went, oh, wow. Now, to some people, that's like, okay, you're taking the metaphor a little bit too far. And again, I can understand that criticism, but for me, it was impactful.
Yeah.
Does the ending leave a little bit to be desired, in my opinion? Yes, because I still don't quite understand what that final scene where she kind of walks in and accuses them and then is quite literally dragged out. It's still very metaphorical, but it loses a little bit of the thread for me. And it ends on not quite the crescendo that I was hoping for. And the epilogue, while decent and helps explain some things that were going on in the movie, they were things that probably should have been highlighted during the movie. So, is it the best movie I've seen this year? No. Is it a very good quality movie that I think I can appreciate more that with repeat viewings? In fact, while you were watching it today, and I just watched few moments of select scenes that I remembered very fondly from going to see it in the theater, I think it might be a better second or third watch than a first watch. But I just thought that the 3 that I had ahead of it were just simply better, more complete films overall. All right, let's go to my number 1, the odds-on favorite to win Best Picture, and if it ends up being that yet again in 3 consecutive years that I agree with the Oscars, I may have to just retire because there was this period from roughly about 2015 up until, Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I just every year disagreed with what the Oscars would pick. I'm not going to be knowing what to do if I get 3 years in a row that I somehow agree with this general international body that we complain all the time picks films that nobody watches. But anyway, I digress. Anora, to me, the reason that I have it number 1, it is the most complete film. It is the film that knows what it is trying to say the most. And while it's metaphorical, it's not up its ass in the way that certain other films are trying to be taking themselves more seriously. This film knows it's supposed to be silly in some ways, especially near the second half of the film where you have these kind of like dumb Russian or Eastern European guys just showing up and kind of being goonish. But it takes on a different meaning as you go through the flow of this. To me, it's the reverse Pretty Woman, and it says something much more profound about the American fairy tale, that in some ways, fairy tales don't exist, that you can pull somebody out of just abject poverty and make them something, that they still are broken, that they still are products of their circumstances. And what cements it for me is that final scene where she has been basically kicked to the curb, and the only person that's shown her any real kindness, treating her as somebody that isn't just simply an object for their enjoyment or entertainment. Because I'll be honest, the young kid never does that. You know quite certain that there is no real love between the two. She's trying to cling to him because he's showing her a life that she could never dream of.
Yeah.
And she wants that promise of what could be. But the only person who ever truly shows her kindness is the person that she's trying to push away the most because she's not familiar with what that kindness actually is. And so the only way she can, at the end of the movie, figure out how to connect with this person is through sex, which she kind of grants. But then she has this breakdown, realizing that this isn't how to connect with people. I can't connect with him just simply by this. He's showing me kindness whether or not I give him my body. And it was a punch in the gut for me how that movie ended. I had a very profound reaction to the second half of the movie. As much as I liked the first half, I just I thought this was an exceptional film. I really loved the way it was cut. There was never a down moment for me. I thought it was propulsive for the entire, I want to say, 135 minutes. And I just loved everything about it.
Okay. The problem I had with it is that it again, it just, I mean, the amount of gratuitous sex that I
Sure.
didn't think had anything to do with carrying the story forward. Um, and how quickly things just seem to escalate. And, you know, at the last half of the film, I'm thinking, is this supposed to be funny? Because it kind of is, but I'm not sure. It's one of these situations where, you know, like slipping on a banana peel. Is that funny or is
Mm.
it not funny? And, is it tragic? And that's kind of what it was. I ended up not finding it as funny as more as just thinking this is just a tragic story. Now, in retrospect, I'm thinking there's a string. We have, I believe, four of these films, which basically question whether the American dream is actually a dream or a nightmare,
Or is a
and
lie.
or a lie, if you want to go that route. Um, we have two of them are complete fantasies, and one is a flashback. So if
Well, and
that's
that's
what you're
before you
trying to
get to
say,
Wicked.
maybe, huh?
And that's before you get to Wicked, which is actually a commentary on totalitarian societies as well.
Yeah. So, which also goes into I'm still here. So, this is a reflection of where we are as a society. I'm kind of
But
not
isn't it
feeling real good at the
reflective?
moment.
Isn't it reflective of where we're at?
Yeah.
I mean, I
So,
often say this, whether or not the movies are good is usually a reflection on American culture. or maybe
Yeah.
global culture as we've kind of gotten a more international feel for the Oscars in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I just I think that in some ways the 10 nominees are very reflective. Okay, Conclave is about politics among old white men, reflective of the moment. We have a musical that's technically about a totalitarian society where a woman who's different breaks out and is meant to be the villain of the film and is actually somewhat the heroine. We have a movie about a folk singer who was anti-establishment. We have a movie that is about the repressive nature against women in Hollywood. I mean, all of these things speak to the exact moment in time that we are. And I feel that often they are reflection. That's why they get nominated. Is they're
Yeah.
speaking to people in a particular moment of time. And that's
Yeah.
why all respect to shows like the Revisionist Almanac, of which I find them to be great discussion pieces. But part of the reason the Oscars is so difficult to understand sometimes is because unless you lived in the moment that something was chosen, it's hard to get a reflection on what people were feeling in the moment that something was chosen.
Yeah. No,
So,
I understand completely, and that's, I guess, the point, which is, you know, and maybe that's part of it, is
that's 3. Okay, I'll filibuster for you here while you have your coughing fit.
well, Nora did not touch the chord with me that the other films did.
And that's fine. We had very similar reactions to something like Poor Things last year,
Yeah.
which I feel that certain levels of gratuitous either violence or sex has always rubbed you the wrong way. And those films are less accessible to you than somebody like me who's kind of grown up in a lot of films of that environment or TV. And so I'm a little bit more desensitized to that being something that I feel is actually gratuitous, but that's fair. So, just to recap, then, that is our discussion for 2025. You have your rankings if you want to count them down from 10 to 1, please.
Um, Amelia Perez, The Substance, Dune Part 2, Anora, Wicked, I'm Still Here, Conclave, A Complete Unknown, Nickel Boys, and The Brutalist.
And my rankings are 10 Conclave, 9 Amelia Perez, 8 The Substance, 7 A Complete Unknown, 6 Nickel Boys, 5 Wicked, 4 The Brutalist, 3 I'm Still Here, 2 Dune Part 2, and number 1 Anora. So if you have watched this entire preview with us, either live or after the fact, and we've gone almost 2 hours here. You can find all of the information so that you can follow along during the course of the Oscars on our website, and that's RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmout podcast. That's Ronnie with a Y, not an IE. And you can certainly follow along on Oscars night, but this is not the end of our live stream series. We also have a post Oscars reaction show that we have several people that have signed up to be a part of that with us. This will be our second annual post Oscars reaction show that will be next Monday. Well, not tomorrow, but the following Monday. So the day after the Oscars at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So in case you're on the East Coast, Mountain Time, West Coast, you know how to factor that out for your timing and whatever else. We will be live streaming on YouTube at that point, and we have several lined up guests to join us that evening. We have Andrew Corns of the Revisionist Almanac, who's going to be joining us. We are hoping to have Kieran B of the BPC on with us as well as Sarah Shea of Shea Cinema, and Clarissa from I've seen that one on Instagram. I believe are all set to be with us, and we have a couple of other people that I believe will also be with us. Michael Willoughby, who was on our Magnolia episode, I believe also goes by the handle Skadoosh, should be on with us that evening as well. And we do have a couple of other people that may pop in. So that should be a great time. And we hope you can join us for that. That will be available also the day after it airs on our audio platform as well. But that is going to do it for us this year for our preview. Thank you for joining us. We've appreciated being able to bring this to you. I like the fact that we're doing this in a live format. It's a way for us to kind of grow and change and adapt and try out and do some new things. So thank you for everyone that was a part of this tonight, and the people that have been commenting live in the chat, whether you your mileage varies on Patton Oswalt or not. Uh, he's at least somebody not only that I respect, but I do like. And so whether you think I'm like Patton Oswalt or my dad is, that's beside the fact. We just
Yeah,
appreciate you
whatever.
being here with us. So, Dad, any final thoughts for this year's Oscars preview?
No, I think I've mentioned this. Being the insomniac, I've been listening to Conan O'Brien's radio uh, station on Sirius XM. Never had really been somebody that had watched Conan O'Brien on TNT, or excuse me, TBS, when his show was on, or when he was had replaced David Letterman. So I have a new
He replaced Jay
appreciation for
Leno.
him. So I'm kind of curious as to see how he'll do.
He replaced Jay Leno.
No, he replaced David Letterman, and then when Leno moved to the 9 o'clock hour, he moved up to take over the Tonight Show, and it lasted very short time. And they ended up paying him 14 million as a buyout to leave because Jay Leno wanted to go back to the Tonight Show.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I don't have a ton of remaining thoughts that I haven't already put out on the list, and certainly not that can also be shared next week if I really think about it. But again, just thank you to everybody that was here with us. I know I've complained about trying to get to as many movies as possible, and in some ways, this does feel a little bit like a chore, especially now that my time constraints are there. But there are a lot of really good movies, and this does force me to watch a lot of good movies that I need sometimes an excuse to push me into watching. So there are factors of this that I really do appreciate. And Dad, again, this is our fourth year doing it, I think.
Yep.
We will be discussing the first film that was up for a Best Picture that we covered at the end of this year, and that's going to be A Promising Young Woman that we both picked as what we thought the best picture was, I think, of 2020.
Yep.
So that's going to be kind of an unusual thing that we have 5 years removed from being on the show this long that we've been able to do that. But
Yeah.
it's always a good time to do this with you. This one of the few things that we really share is kind of this Oscars passion and talk. And it's one of the things that really got me into movies and then has explored beyond. You know, you kind of originally get in because you love the Oscars, and then you go through this next rebellious phase where you push back against the Oscars because they don't celebrate all the good movies. And then you finally come back around and you're like, oh, well, the Oscars can't get it right, but at least they're bringing people to movies. So it's kind of a weird love-hate relationship, but definitely something that I enjoy trying to do every year. And very, I very much feel some accomplishment that yet again, I am able to get to all of the Best Picture nominees before the Oscars. I think this is the 10th year that I've been able to do so, but it's always a fun time. So some quick housekeeping. We will have an episode out on Wednesday. That is going to be our Schindler's List episode. That'll be our 5th anniversary episode, as well as our 250th episode. So be on the lookout for that. And then, like I said, next or a week from tomorrow, so that would be Monday the 3rd, the day after the Oscars, we will have our live stream post Oscars reaction show. And then after that, we will have another episode the following Wednesday on Coal Miner's Daughter. But until then, thank you for listening. And is the closing music going to play? There we go. I probably should have played the closing music a little earlier. Oh well. The products of being live.